Hey traders, John Fortune here of this week's Weekly Forex Forecast for the 16th of March to the 20th of March 2020. As always, what we're going to do is we're going to look at the US dollar index and crude oil before running through a number of markets, looking at the key levels of support and resistance in the process. And we're also going to be highlighting some of the targets that we're going to be looking for in the coming week and also for the weeks ahead. So I hope you're having a nice weekend. Let's jump over to the charts and see where the money is this week. As always, we're going to start off by looking at US dollar index. Now you can see that we are getting a lot of volatility coming into the US dollar index. These candles here from the last 2 weeks, you can see just by comparison to weeks previous, they are much larger, and this is as we're starting to get higher and higher prints in the VIX, showing that we have high volatility coming into the markets in general. This does mean that we have more risk. It means we have more reward in the markets, but in terms of the US dollar index, what we currently have in terms of structure is, although we have made a new low to the downside here, we have this V-shape reversal. We would like to have seen some corrective structure coming into this move to the upside, but instead it's gone up pretty much the same way it came down. This kind of V-shaped reversal, it tells us when you see this that the market is in no clear direction. It is not particularly bullish, it is not particularly bearish, it's actually correcting. And this means that we're going to be trading the individual currency pairs on their own merit, without a strong bias one way or the other in the dollar. So next market we're going to look at is crude oil. Now last week we highlighted 39.13 as an area to look for moves to the downside in crude oil. We did have a big sell-off to the downside and we've started to correct. We did take out target set at 39.13. What we'd like to see going into this week is we already have a bit of a correction. Any more of a correction is going to be fantastic, as this is going to give us an opportunity to start to look for bearish setups. And if we get the right kind of setups in this market, we're going to be looking at initiating shorts down towards the next key of support to the downside and the target set at 26.04. The next market we're going to look at is euro dollar. Now last week we highlighted the key area of resistance to the upside at 1.1412. We did tag this target and we started to reverse from this area last week, coming very close to the key area of support we highlighted last week also at the 1.10390. We have now had this pullback towards this key area of broken resistance, looking to turn support at the 1.10390. So very simply put, going into this week, we're going to be looking for bullish setups in this area. And if we get the right kind of bullish setups in this area, we're going to be looking at initiating longs up towards the next key area of resistance to the upside and the target set at the 1.1569. So next market we're going to look at is pound dollar. Now last week we had a big sell-off to the downside in pound dollar as we had that reversal to the upside in the dollar index, plus we had a 50 basis point cut out of the Bank of England last week. Very simply put, going into this week we are looking for further declines to the downside and we are focused on short setups in pound dollar. What we would like to see is, we're coming quite close to the next key of support to the downside, we'd like to see a correction first. This gives us better risk to reward on our setups. If we can get a pullback, and as always, preferably if we can come back and test broken support from the past, turning resistance to 1.27380. This would be preferable as it would give us the best risk to reward setups. But any pullback in this area is going to be viewed as an opportunity to start to look for bearish setups. And we're going to be looking at initiating shorts down towards the next key of support to the downside and the target set at the 1.2196. And if we can get a break through here, we're going to be looking down towards the next key of support to the downside and target 2 at the 1.2016. So next market we're going to look at is US dollar Japanese yen. Now last week we were looking further declines to the downside in this market. We did come down and we gapped down, and then we had this big sell off to the downside, taking out both targets set at the 107.24 and the 101.86. You can see this is the second target from last week. Once we tagged this, we started to reverse and we started to pull back. We are still structured to the downside in US dollar yen. So very simply put, what we'd like to see is if we can come back a little bit further and if we can retest broken support from the past, turning resistance at the 110.10, this would be a great place next week to start to look for bearish setups. And if we get the right kind of bearish reversals in this market, we're going to be looking at initiating shorts back down to the second key area of support and target 2 from last week to the 101.86. So next market we're going to look at is Aussie dollar. Now last week we started the week in this area and we were looking for further declines to the downside in last week's video. We did highlight a target of the 0.6286, which we did come down and take out from last week. Into this week we are still looking for further declines as a high probability move in this market, and we are still only focused on shorts to the downside in Aussie dollar. What we would like to see is because we've had this sell-off here, if we can get a correction, any pullback in this area is going to be viewed as an opportunity to once again start to look for bearish setups. And we're going to be looking at initiating shorts down towards the next key of support to the downside in the target set at the 0.6016. So next market we're going to look at is New Zealand dollar. Now last week we were looking further declines to the downside, and we did highlight the target of the 0.6128. We did come down and we took out the target set from last week, and we are looking for further declines once again in this market this week. If we can get a pullback, and as always if we can come back and retest broken support from the past, turning resistance, this is going to be a great place next week to once again start to look for bearish setups. And we're going to be looking at initiating shorts down towards the next key of support to the downside and target set at the 0.5785. So the next market we're going to look at is US dollar Swiss franc. Now last week we were looking further declines to the downside, and we did take out both targets to the downside at 0.9287 and the 0.9188. You can see this was the target set from last week, the second target, and we turned almost to the pip here and started to pull back towards the key area of broken support from the past, now looking to turn resistance at 0.9611. Going into next week, once again we're going to be looking for short setups in this market. If we can come back, and preferably if we can retest broken support turning resistance, this is going to be a great place next week to start to look for bearish setups. And we're going to be looking at initiating shorts down towards the next key of support to the downside in the target set at the 0.9188. So next market we're going to look at is US dollar CAD. Now last week we were looking further advances to the upside in this market, and we did take out both targets to the upside at the 1.3499 and the 1.3563. So very simply put, going into this week we are once again looking further advances to the upside. We are focused on bullish setups in this market. If we can get a pullback, and any pullback in this area, preferably if we can come back and retest broken resistance turning support at the 1.34420, as again this will give us the best risk to reward ratios on our setups. But any pullback in this area is going to be viewed as an opportunity to start to look for bullish setups, and we're going to be looking at initiating longs up towards the next key of resistance, the upside in the target set at the 1.4113. And last but not least, we have gold. Now, last week we had this sell-off to the downside as panic crept into some of the markets. We saw gold selling off. It is a safe haven asset, but it's also a liquid asset, and it gets sold off in times of panic as people cover debts, or they cover costs elsewhere, or they even cover margin calls if they're trading. And we saw this last week. So very simply put, going into this week, we are looking for further declines to the downside. We have had a reversal in the gold market. What we would like to see is if we can get a pullback, and preferably if we can come back and retest broken support turning resistance to the 1651.14. This would also set up a nice potential head and shoulders structure. If we can get a pullback, any pullback in this area is going to be viewed as an opportunity to start to look for bearish reversal patterns. And if we get the right kind of patterns in this market, we're going to be looking at initiating shorts down towards the next key of support to the downside in the target set at the 1482.76. And if we can get a break through here, we're going to be looking down towards the next key of support to the downside in target 2 at the 1445.80. So that is it from me for this week, guys. As always, I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please let me know by liking, sharing and subscribing. A big thank you to everyone who does that on a regular basis, and a big thank you to everyone who has subscribed to the channel so far. I want to wish you all a fantastic weekend, and I want to wish you all the best in your trading next week. The only thing left to say, guys, is take care and don't forget to trade safely.